Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Eifel Grand Prix race review podcast for this afternoon's race at the Nürburgring in Germany. The race was brilliant. We had Lewis Hamilton equal 91 wins with Michael Schumacher to become the most successful all-time driver alongside the seven-time world champion in terms of wins, a result that's been coming for a long time for him. I'm Freddie Coates, and I'm here with Nigel and Adam Dickinson, where we're going to chew over the fact from what was quite a weird race at points, but turned into a pretty decent one, and one that I think, as a fan, you can kind of enjoy as a milestone race for Hamilton. Nigel, how are you doing? You having a good day? Did you enjoy the race?
Yeah, it was a quite a good race. I thought lots of talking points, it was quite action packed, and yeah, Hamilton equaling the record. Finally done it. He'll might look to beat it next time out, of course.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see, won't we? But yeah.
You doing good, Adam?
Yeah.
I'll bring you in.
Not spoken to Freddie since I entered his house. So yeah, Freddie, I'm doing very well. Yeah, I enjoyed the race. I thought coming into the race, I was concerned kind of if there wasn't, like chaotic weather or, kind of something to mix up the order at the start, would it be, that good a race? And it was. So yeah, it was kind of surprised me from that aspect, and yeah, really enjoyed it. Good battles up and down the field.
Yeah, there were quite a few good battles. You had an actual overtake for the lead, which was what brought Valtteri Bottas out of contention at the start for the race win. He did take pole in the first place yesterday after a very, very strong qualifying for him. Actually, he was well up the road from Lewis Hamilton. He was purple in all the sectors to set basically an all-time fastest lap of the Nürburgring to take pole position, despite Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen nipping at his heels all session. He retained the lead at the start, despite getting a slightly worse start than Hamilton. They were all misjudged turn one. It's such a bonkers turn one there. The way it's got a mini cliff as on the apex, so they have to go out wide. And everyone was off the track, and that enabled Bottas to get his elbows out and stick it with Hamilton, and then keep the lead until his lockup around lap 15 or so. Unfortunately, he was out of the race later on with a power unit issue, so it probably was meant to be that Bottas wasn't going to win this race. But do we think it was a tough ride for Lewis? Do we think it was a race that he had to work for a bit more, or do we think it was handed to him a bit more? Nigel, what do you think? Do you have any strong opinions on this?
I think I've always got strong opinions. I think Hamilton would have won anyway because of the overtake, and ultimately it was a mistake from Bottas. Bottas would have probably finished second or even third. So yeah, I think Hamilton would have won anyway, even without the power unit problem for Bottas at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, I think I'd concur with that. I mean, it was like a lot of his wins this season that he just had to kind of drive flawlessly, and he did, and Bottas didn't, and then retired. But I think I agree with you. I think he would have won anyway, having got the overtake. And he said afterwards, kind of, he felt his tyres felt good, and he just thought Bottas was pushing it, to try and keep a decent gap, and he thought he would kind of put the foot wrong at some point. I really liked the first corner. It's kind of, you thought at one stage it looked like they might take each other out, or but actually it was kind of, all the cars ran right, but they did a normal corner. It was like they did a normal line through the corner, but just kind of 10 meters further across than the actual corner and track markings were. And it was good from Bottas to kind of keep in the fight and kind of retain the lead through turn two.
Yeah, and in second place at the end of the race, we have Max Verstappen, who was nipping at the heels of the Mercs in the early stints, which sort of drove the pace up and ultimately led to the tyre issues, probably for Valtteri Bottas. Hamilton did complain, I think, on the radio. I think you could say it's a complaint, but he was a bit shocked, I think, at how Max Verstappen was able to nip on his heels so much during that opening stint. He managed to finish 5 seconds off Lewis Hamilton at the end of the race, getting fastest lap on the final lap to deny Lewis Hamilton from being 70 points clear of Valtteri Bottas in the World Championship. I don't know how close Verstappen is. I think he's only about 15 points off Bottas now in the championship, based on that result. with his 19 points for second and fastest lap. Verstappen looked to be the only sort of candle held to Hamilton for about 40 laps of that race. Never sort of dipping behind 10 seconds off him. Do you think if there hadn't been the late safety car due to Lando Norris's retirement, do you think there could have been a sort of gamble from Red Bull? Do you think they would have pitted on anything, or do you reckon it would have just been hold station, bring it home for second?
No. Yeah. I think if Verstappen pitted, Hamilton would have just pitted the next lap. And then if Verstappen doesn't pit, Hamilton won't pit either. There's not much they could have done.
Yeah, and I think there was a much better chance for Verstappen to get ahead through the safety car than there would have been by kind of running a strategy gamble. And it was, didn't mention this when discussing Hamilton, but it was a flawless race start. Just completely dropped the rest of the pack. And I think Verstappen came under a bit of pressure from the cars behind as well, kind of through the final corner. So really good from Hamilton. And that was really, when Verstappen would have had to have pounced. But he just wasn't able to.
Yeah. Hamilton went at the right point, didn't he? He went at before the chicane, so he can give himself a bit of a run, warm up his tyres a little bit more than if he went after the chicane. So he did exactly the right thing on the restart.
Yeah, he was doing so well that he was weaving on the straight, because he had basically, I don't know how many cars widths he had, to probably the maximum he could have done to Verstappen at that point, and was just in control of that restart. I mean, yeah, you say that's the only point. If Verstappen had got ahead, I still think Hamilton would have won. I think the DAS system in the Mercedes for this heating up the tyres would have just been able to absolutely pounce on the Red Bull, I think, at the end of that race anyway, even if Verstappen had got ahead. But yeah, Hamilton was flawless in that regard. Third place, the fight for third place was completely open from Valtteri Bottas's retirement, which normally we don't have. Normally you have the Bottas, Verstappen, Hamilton bingo card crossed off for every race. But third place became a completely open book after Bottas's retirement, and that was sealed by Renault's Daniel Ricciardo, taking his first podium since Monaco 2018, and Renault's first podium for Renault as a car company entity works team since Malaysia 2011, and Team Enstone's first podium since Spa 2015. Flawless drive from Ricciardo as well, do we think?
Yeah, I think it was shaping up to be an interesting battle at the end before the safety car, with Perez and Ricciardo on different strategies, and didn't know whether, how they played that, whether Ricciardo would have to pit again or whether he kind of be holding on more worn tyres, and Perez was closing in quite a lot. I think they said 7/10 a lap with about 15 laps or so to go. So it's kind of shaping up to be interesting from there. And then safety car happened and they both pit. And initially it looked like Racing Point had gambled and left Perez out, but then they pit in the next lap and he slotted him back behind Ricciardo. So yeah, I mean, he did, he didn't break down, which is what is Norris did, is kind of one of his rivals for the podium position. And yeah, he just, did everything he needed to do, kept cool and kept the pace high as well. So yeah, good drive from Danny Rick.
Yeah, he's thoroughly deserved it as well. He's been driving brilliantly all year, and Renault hooked it up again on this relatively high downforce circuit, which is a bit different to what we've had in the last few races. So the Renault car seems to be a pretty versatile car now, when in the last few years they seem to only do well on certain circuits. Now they're doing quite well across the board, it seems. And yeah, Ricciardo's just doing a brilliant job. And I think Martin Brundle said, wouldn't it be great if Alonso and Ricciardo were in the Renault team next year or something?
Yeah, and we've had a few novelty podiums this year as well, partly because Ferrari are now considered a novelty podium because they're awful. But yeah, we've had Leclerc twice, Norris, Sainz, obviously Gasly getting the win, and Stroll getting it as well. So it's been quite a good. Obviously, there's been the stranglehold by Verstappen, Bottas and Hamilton when they are on form, but when they're not, it has opened it up, and it's been quite interesting looking at that battle behind.
I think, we've got to really praise Ricciardo for his original strategy before the safety car kind of rescued that, I think, rescued that sanity. Otherwise, I think you'd be pulling your hair out if you're a Ricciardo fan or driving a member of the Renault team, because having to nurse those tyres from actually really early on for probably 2/3, 3/4 of the race, he would have nursed a set of mediums on what was predicted to be a two-stopper strategy, which it was in the end. But he would have done incredibly well without the safety car to get the podium. And I think to hold that gap to Perez that he did for so long, I think we've really got to applaud Ricciardo for that, and equally applaud Perez for his 30 lap stint, as well as Norris did, on soft tyres. They both did fantastically to eke out their tyres that way. Norris probably would have been in the fight for the podium at the end if he didn't have his power unit issue, which brought on the safety car, which is a bit of a shame because he's been on it all weekend. He's not got the upgraded bits for the McLaren. Those are on Sainz's car, but the pace was always with Lando Norris.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Norris, I think that was possibly one of his best races of the year, definitely since Austria, was it, on the podium? No, yeah, Austria was the podium. Sainz said after the race that the new upgrades didn't really work and it was graining the front tyres, whereas Norris with the old package fared better. But yeah, Norris was, even with the power troubles Norris had, he managed it really well to carry on going on in the race until obviously he had to retire because it got too bad, I guess.
Yeah, that was an interesting debate that McLaren are going to be having, because they've had Fridays to test out their new parts, but they haven't had that this weekend. But they have, whenever they've had the new parts on the car, the other car's not been in the race. They've actually, Sainz was wiped out so early on in Mugello, and Sainz drove into the wall in Sochi, quite embarrassingly. And we only got a couple of laps running with comparing the new parts on the car. So they've actually at least had about 40 odd laps comparing the new parts in race trim completely on the car, which kind of makes up for the lack of Friday at least to compare that. But I think, there's going to be a few questions at McLaren about whether they're going down the right path, because they did look to be where Renault are now. They look to be the team that was steady everywhere, stable and, plug and play car. But now it seems to be Renault has that.
I think it's also because next year's cars are going to be a continuation mostly of this year's cars, and McLaren, because they're switching engines, they're going to have less development credit points to begin with anyway. So I think for them it's kind of massive that they do get, the path that they're going on their upgrades correct, because it's going to be, there's going to be a bigger penalty than most years if they don't. I think they've not been, I think, as consistent as Renault. I mean, at any point in the season, Renault over the last few races have kind of, I think, been a bit, always seems to be around that top five. Whereas McLaren, obviously, they did well at the Red Bull Ring, but they've kind of, had some races where they drop off and kind of yo-yoed a bit between, the front of the midfield and the back, or kind of the back of the point scoring positions.
Yeah, Renault have really developed well, because I think in Spain they were 11th and 13th, and that was on pure pace, and McLaren were fourth fastest team that weekend, just behind the Racing Points. And when we were at Silverstone and Austria early in the season, we were talking about McLaren being the slippery car and the one that was probably going to be the high-speed car that could take advantage. But then we got from Spa onwards, Renault has been the car to have in these conditions, and they've absolutely floored it in constructors points wise. They were way behind Ferrari, Racing Point and McLaren at that point in the season, but they've really closed it. I think the fight going through the next few races, Portugal, Imola, Turkey, all of that is going to be really interesting to see even if Racing Point can keep up there in the top three of the constructors standings. I think that's going to be, my money's now on Renault for that position.
Yeah, Knock-on could have got fifth today, I think, if it wasn't for his problems. So it could have been an extra 8 points for Renault as well. So. And
a bit more, because that would have pushed Sainz down.
Yeah. 10.
Yeah, although, if you're doing that, you got to look at if Norris had finished the race. But
true,
I take your point. It is, he would have been in the running there, definitely. And it is, I think, if you were going to bet out of kind of the last block of races, if you're going to bet which circuit, or if Renault were going to bet which circuit they get a podium on, I don't think they'd pick this one.
I thought this would be the weakest track.
Yeah, there's been several tracks where they seem to have gone in and kind of quite bullish and made a lot of noises about, oh, we think this is going to be one where we're going to be up there, but I didn't see so much from them about that this weekend. So yeah, to kind of get it on here, I guess partly shows how it's a bit of a look of the draw in terms of, you know, how it shapes it further up the field, but also, as we've said, how their car is developing into a really good all-rounder.
Yeah, we've mentioned about the Bahrain Outer potentially being their only podium chance when they didn't get one in Monza, but we were completely wrong with that. Every race since, Renault have been in contention for a podium pretty much. Mugello, Ricciardo was running third until a few laps from the end, and I can't remember whether they did that. But yeah, he was close in Russia actually. He was third on the first lap. Ocon was up there as well. So
Spa as well.
Spa. Every race, I think we've got to really probably count Renault into the podium fight. Silverstone fourth place.
Yeah, he said after that he thought if it had gone on for a few more laps, then he would have thought if
it had gone for a few more laps, Hamilton would have pit.
Yeah, that is true. but yeah, you know, I think it's good for them to kind of get that monkey off their back. A bit like we talked about with Albon, I'm sure we'll get to later on, and with the novelty podium that we mentioned earlier. But yeah, for them to kind of get that monkey off their back and to have something show for their, you know, years in F1 since they have come back, they've now, you know, a bit like Honda at Austria last year, kind of have got something to point to and tangible that they can, you know, really celebrate now. Yeah,
the Albon rant is coming. Don't worry. It's probably going to be a three-pronged attack on Alex Albon today, but we're gonna tease that to you now. But we're going to move on to another sort of interesting point of this weekend, which seems unique, but actually we've got another race to look forward to it, and that was the washout on Friday, leading to only 1 hour of free practice 3 that was basically consistent running all the way through, and teams having absolutely no clue what to do in the race. The strategy today for everyone was ridiculous. I mean, you were watching 10th, 9th, 8th, and it was a different driver every lap, pretty much. So do you guys think the experiment that we were going to see in Imola, but have been fortunate, I think, to get here, has improved the racing, has basically taken away the information from the teams? Do you think, is that a good idea?
It's a really tough one, because I feel if they did it for every race, the teams would somehow adapt to it and they'll just do more work off the track. If they do it at some races, so not all the races, if they do it for, say, 25% of the races on the calendar, then maybe it would work. But it does tend to produce better Grand Prix. I guess if you look at USA 2015, was it? And that was a washout. That turned out to be a really good race as well between Red Bull and Mercedes. So I think it is a good idea, but not for every race.
I quite like the idea of not telling the teams whether they're going to have it until like they rock. And then like Friday morning, they're like, actually, you know, you can go to the theme park or whatever because we're not doing practice today. And then you have to scramble around. So
the only reason it's not popped up sooner, actually, on a format, on a bill, is because the tickets are so expensive anyway for a Friday. People just pay for a Friday and get to go and see F1 cars. If they can't afford a race, they can go on a Friday. And I think, that's a really crucial part of it, because you can't close off such a portion of fans. You can't say you have 100,000 people coming through the gates on Friday, Saturday and Sunday individually, and you have 50,000 people with weekend tickets, and say you get 50,000 people just getting a ticket for a Friday, because that's what a lot of people do, because it's what a lot of people can only afford.
And Friday is the best day to go to a race, arguably, as well.
You get a lot of running, you get to see all the cars, and you can explore the track at your leisure, really. If you go to Silverstone on a Friday at the Grand Prix, then you don't have set seats. You can go and sit anywhere. You can sit all around the track. You can watch a car on Quali Sims go through Maggots and Beckett. You can watch them on Highfield go through Abbey. You can go and see them go through Stowe. You can sit opposite the pits and watch that if you want. And you have that on a Friday. But because we're all at home this year, apart from the 20,000 fans at the Nürburgring today, actually, but because we're all at home for pretty much everything this year, they can be experimental with the format and not have the promoters on their back and not have the ticket-paying public on their back. And I think it's an argument that is the only argument I think really preventing it, personally.
Yeah, I think put have two qualifyings, put one on Friday morning, they rock up straight in the car, one shot, boom, do your qualifying. Then you get the practice sessions, and then they have another one on Saturday and find the aggregate time out of that, and then everyone's happy. I just made that up now, you might be able to tell. But I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes at Imola, because it will show kind of whether, well, it won't show, but it will give us more of an idea of whether how it played out here was an anomaly, or whether, you know, as you said, if they've got time to plan for it, whether that kind of reduces the impact of it. So I think...
And they'll have half an hour extra in Imola. It's an hour and a half there. They only had an hour because it was the scheduled FP3. At Imola, they're properly scheduled for an hour and a half running on Saturday morning before qualifying.
Yeah. The best way to find out is to do it on a track, to go to a lot of Spain or Silverstone, because doing it here and doing it at Imola, the new or returning tracks anyway, so it's not really fair, I'd say, because there's so many other factors of it being a new track and stuff. So I think, yeah, like I said, the best thing to do is to go to a regular track to try it out. Probably.
I think having done it, well, kind of done it at two tracks where obviously this one wasn't planned, but at two tracks where they don't go regularly will have massively increased the impact of it. You know, if you go, especially Barcelona, where they've been for testing already, you know, it probably, you know, I can't see how much it will really change. Yeah, it will really change it. So
we've had washouts before. Suzuka a couple of years ago. I remember it popped up at the end with Sergei Sorokin finishing third in the session and all of that. So people don't run anyway, even if the sessions are wet and they can go out. So you get a little bit of wet running and that'll be it. And it becomes a washout, but it becomes a normal day anyway the next few days. The typhoon in Suzuka last year, Hagibis didn't really impact much. It just moved qualifying to an ungodly hour for the European view. I think I watched 5 minutes of it, saw Kubica crash and thought, you know what, I'm not watching this red flag and going to bed, and went back to sleep. It's just, I think it would really change a lot, but I think you're right. They would come up with contingency plans, and it's just another day in the simulator, really, to be honest. Another day that they can keep the main driver at the factory before they go. The media days just push back and all of that. So I think it'd be interesting on some tracks that you need to dial into. So you've got Monaco with that. Spa back in the day, not so much these days, but tracks you need to really build up to, tracks that the driver really makes the difference on. But on somewhere like Sochi, you'll be on the limit immediately, really, because there's not much to prevent it.
That's a good one, actually. At like Silverstone, or tracks where there's a short track, like Silverstone or Bahrain, there's millions of layouts. I think Cota's got one, Red Bull Ring. They kind of have practice, have the Friday running just on like a short track, so they get to learn half the track, but not the other. And then on Saturday, it's like, surprise! That's this other bit. Banging the theories in today.
They would be so surprised by the rest of the layout, like, oh wow, I didn't see that over there.
Yeah, and then they've got to adapt to that within like 2 minutes, and then boom, you're out for qualifying.
Adam Dickinson's format changes to F1, ladies and gentlemen.
I think there was a World Motorsport Council meeting the other day. I'm sure Adam was ringing them up, giving them all the ideas. That's where all the kind of weird Le Mans prototype rules have just come in, where they're saying you're not allowed to have proper drivers or whatever. It's all been a mess over there if you follow that. But we won't go into that now because I don't think anyone understands it.
It did make it interesting.
It's a bit insulting to our viewers, Freddie.
Oh, maybe they understand. I don't understand it.
To make it a bit interesting to report, I was reporting on FP1. I believe you had.
I had FP2, yeah.
So yeah, that was the first time I've had to report on an event that didn't take place.
I was quite pleased with the amount of copy I managed to generate from when nothing happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. I tried to make it a bit more. We all do the same journalism course, if you don't know, and we've had lectures in the past few weeks on sort of colour writing, a bit more of a piece that's got a bit more, not just like a report, something that's a bit more like a mini novella as an article. And I was trying to get a bit more of that into it, just because you just be like, oh, look at the lovely wet track and all of that. I'm really bad at it, as you can tell. But
they're playing depressing music. I think it was Lewis Capaldi, someone you loved, and Outnumbered as well, which are both not very inspiring tunes or kind of uplifting tunes. So yeah, that wasn't adding to that atmosphere for FP1.
The poor local fans who were unable to see anything and got probably hypothermia. Another crazy story from this weekend, though, is the arrival of Nico Hülkenberg to Formula One again. Lance Stroll was taken ill on Saturday morning, not with COVID, but with a viral issue with him where he's been basically not able to leave his bathroom, let's put it that way, and completely unable to race. And he apparently was feeling ill from Russia, so I don't know whether he's got salmonella or something bizarre like that. I'm no doctor, but it sounds like he's not in a good way, the poor lad. But it allowed the F1 community to have another Hulkenbach scenario like we did at Silverstone. Nico Hulkenberg was phoned at, I believe, 11 in the morning in Germany, where he's having coffee with a mate. And it was Otmar Safnauer, team principal of Racing Point. He got in his Porsche RS2, I think, which was apparently sold to him a couple of months ago by Keke Rosberg, which is another fun fact that Nico Rosberg instilled on the Sky commentary this weekend. He absolutely hooned it down the Autobahn in Germany, where he can go at 300 million miles an hour and not be stopped by police, and got to the track in the middle of FP3, had his COVID test because he had already been sorted on that because he was going to be reporting, and got in the car for qualifying and was 0.4 off Q2.
Yeah, it was brilliant. You know, he was trying to outdo his stand-in performances from earlier in the season by standing in even later. Yeah, it was. I think his first lap was kind of 3 or 4 seconds off the next best driver. Might have been Giovinazzi, but you know, to just get back into a car that you've not driven in months, and you know, a track that you've not driven at in a while, then to kind of get in and be that close to the pace immediately is just stunning, really. And yeah, fair play to him. And then he did really well in the race. He made 12 places, and he made a lot of them up early in the race as well, kind of siding through the field there, obviously in a faster car, but you know, it's still you know, not an easy task by any means. Yeah, exactly. So I think he's done well, and he's kind of been, ironically, one of the F1 drivers who boosted their kind of shares the most, stakes the most in the driver market over this year, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It was an incredible performance from Hulkenberg. He only did 4 or 5 laps in qualifying before to go straight into the race, and to finish 8th is a fantastic result. And I mean, he's showing that he still has it and that he deserves to be on the grid. And there wasn't much more he could do in those circumstances. And I know just a few laps. No, I take that back. So some drivers will, but not like, yeah, I don't know. It was a great performance. That's all you need to know.
Do we all think it's a massive travesty that the 2 drivers who we think probably performed some of the best performances today, Sergio Perez and Nico Hülkenberg, both don't have contracts in Formula One for 2021?
Yeah, I think last year when Hulk left, I didn't think it was such a massive thing. I kind of thought, you know, he's had a long time in F1. You know, don't feel like, you know, up in arms about it. But I do kind of, seeing how he's come back this year and performed so well, I kind of more in on that point of view. Now he's only something like 8 points behind Vettel in the championship, which is incredible. It's just absolutely insane.
All the races he started this year, he's finished in the points.
Yeah.
I think safe to say he probably would have finished in the points in Silverstone 1 had he made it to the grid, and that could have been
if his tyres had survived.
If his tyres had survived, of course. That would have been it's been a pretty fairy tale year for him. I mean, it's 2020. He said in a Sky interview, just like any other day for me. This is how I roll, and I think I've got a lot of respect for that. It's not like any day for me. I don't get called up to F1 drives. Do we think that there are a couple of drivers, naming no Alex Albons, who are hogging a seat that one of these guys would deserve.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I think
we named all the Alex Albons.
I think I thought about it kind of during lockdown. I kind of thought out of the grid, there's probably 5, so a quarter of the grid, but that you kind of think
could be subbed out.
Yeah, it could be subbed out, and you wouldn't miss them too much. I think I wouldn't put the greatest tyre driver in the history of F1 in that list. But yeah, I think there are a few definitely that can be there, but that's the same in most years, to be fair.
So Alex Albon's race, we said we'd come on to it. Alex Albon retired about lap 25 or so after what looked like a sin bin from his team, but has actually since been declared to be a Honda issue, which apparently no one heard.
I don't think it was a Honda issue.
You think he was sin binned?
I genuinely
attacking the AlphaTauri with so much verve and vigour that he was basically, who knows what he was thinking.
On the pit wall, they just held out a big yellow card as he drove past, and then
he chopped in front of Kvyat. He dived Pierre Gasly every corner and still couldn't get past, and Charles Leclerc did it in one try a couple of laps later. And basically just sort of spontaneously combusted from his 5th place position and gradually destroyed so many sets of tyres that it was, without crashing the car, it was a car crash.
Good Nigel.
Yeah, but don't forget, everyone says he's got great racecraft, remember? This race... Oh, no, wait.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say.
It was naff.
You know my thoughts. I've been saying it since probably race 3 or 4, so... Yeah. It was just clumsy.
It was.
It felt like sometimes I've been like racing on F1 online and on the street circuit and biff my wing in, come into the pits and kind of get a new one and then just go out and immediately mash up that one as well, and just kind of in a cycle like that. And it felt like he was a bit like that with his tyres. He really, really messed them up kind of on the first lap on the first sector, possibly turn 3, and kind of came in, swapped over, and it felt then like, what can he expect from his race? And then he messed them up again. He, on paper in qualifying, he looked to be 4th, and then Leclerc pulled out a monster lap. I mean, he was still half second off Verstappen, but Leclerc pulled out a monster lap to kind of split that and take him off the second row, which, ultimately I don't think it would have made any difference, but just maybe for him internally, that would have been something to hold on to and just think this is an achievement. But yeah, it's just poor race all around from him.
There has been sort of inklings that Red Bull are really trying to get behind Albon, and of course there's been no announcement about any contracts really for AlphaTauri or Red Bull currently, apart from the lack of a Honda one. And Red Bull really want Albon to work because they don't want to admit their mistakes. They don't want to admit how much they've got it wrong and how much they didn't nurture a driver. They're trying to learn from it by nurturing Albon, but they're trying to do it, which is a positive. And one way they were going to do that was really impacted by practice this weekend. There was an announcement on Friday night that they were going to change his chassis, and the reason for that was because they were trying an experimental chassis on the Friday with different suspension mounting points. They had consulted Albon for what he wanted and had actually made the chassis made this particular chassis favoured to Albon, and we're going to trial it on Friday. Obviously, they couldn't do that with no runnings. They had to put it onto a chassis they knew how to set up for the race, which is why he was on, why they reverted the chassis. But Red Bull are trying with Albon. They're trying hard. And it feels in races like today that it's just, he just needs to be better. And that's a really horrible thing to say. And it's a really horrible thing to say because you can nurture a driver, you can make a driver better, but the driver's got to do his bit.
Yeah.
He's out of his depth, I feel. I know it's a harsh comment, but...
It's a really harsh comment. It did feel like he...
I don't think he's...
So... It's a good title for the... yeah. I mean, I think what Red Bull are doing is the right thing. It's what I have been calling for them to be doing. Just to know either way, kind of whether he is suitable for the seat or not. Because I don't think you could make that kind of draw that conclusion after a few races. But as we're going further and further through the season, there's more and more data to look at and races to look at. It is kind of looking more and more like he isn't the driver that a lot of people I thought he could be. And yeah, it's sad to see, and it feels like he is kind of suffering a lot internally because there was feel good around him coming into the seat, and it's just not that's just deserted him completely, which is sad to see.
It's not an injustice to sack a driver after an entire season where he's been out-qualified, out-raced, outperformed completely. And as much as there's a lot to be up in arms about with the way Red Bull treat drivers, I think they have a lot of evidence to replace Alex Albon at the end of this.
He would have been lapped today if he stayed in the race.
Yeah.
So
he would be lapped by his teammate most likely.
Yeah.
But he would have been able to unlap himself, so it's roundabouts.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Building up to before the safety car, Daniel Ricciardo was a comfortable minute behind cruising Hamilton and Verstappen. The gap between Formula One and Formula 1.5 today was pretty mighty, I think, and I think it was saved in PR perspectives by the safety car cutting that gap to probably about 15, 16 seconds, rather than the minute plus, probably minute and a half it was nearly going to be. Do we think we all think this is bad, don't we? We have a driver in third who is on target to have a brilliant result and something we think is amazing, and it's just two drivers is absolutely donkeys clear out of the fight ahead. And I think for me, for that, 2022 can't come soon enough.
Yeah. I think I didn't mind it so much today because there was good battles kind of up and down the field. Obviously, there wasn't much of a one for the lead, especially after Bottas retired. But I think it's kind of two pronged. Is one that there's not many races where there is a genuine battle for the lead, and then kind of behind that there's just such a massive gap to the next pack. So yeah, I hope it gets closer, but I think I'd probably prefer to have had a battle for the lead, like kind of two teams that are very close together and are battling for the lead, and then miles ahead of everyone else.
But you have a guaranteed fight.
Yeah, rather than
that's a good point.
One team that's consistently a bit ahead, and then like everyone else. So they're not as far ahead as the leading pack is at the moment. But you've got less of a battle there.
Yes, and there were quite a few strong performances down the field. We had Charles Leclerc, Adam's mentioned, finishing fourth in qualifying and finishing seventh in the race, I think.
Yeah.
Which was a very good performance for Ferrari. That's looked a lot better at the moment in the hands of Charles Leclerc. Ferrari were the only power unit manufacturer to not suffer a failure today, which should, I think, perhaps be noted in the really cold conditions. Ferrari normally work quite well in the heat, but maybe they've completely reversed that as they reversed their power unit from good to bad this year.
So just need a Norwegian Grand Prix.
Yes, that's what we need.
Norwegian Grand Prix, Siberian Grand Prix, Alaskan Grand Prix, and they're in business.
The Alaskan Grand Prix will be a definite must for every F1 season in the future, I'm sure. Studded tyres like we thought we'd have this weekend and everything. Romain Grosjean got 2 points for Haas, complemented by the completely weird strategy conundrum of P7 to P15, where everyone was all over the place, which was very fun and very confusing, and I can't explain any of it. But Grosjean came through after basically saying he thinks he's broken his finger on lap 1 when some gravel flew up and hit his hand. And he just basically was driving through the pain in the cold, which will just not help his wound at all, and got doubled Haas's 2020 points haul.
Yeah, it's great because Haas have had an awful season, so to get to double the points total, like you said, Freddie, is fantastic, especially with Grosjean's injury. Did they gamble at the restart by not pitting? Is that right?
I think Grosjean was up to 7th under the safety car. So I think they may have held Grosjean up there, and he dropped down. I think he was taken by Gasly early on, and then taken by Leclerc as well.
So the gamble not to pit, I guess it paid off.
Yeah, it did. It would have paid off. Something they've tried a few times this year and not come off amazingly, having to resort to some rather sketchy manoeuvres from Romain Grosjean in races. Then maybe Silverstone springs to mind. I don't know, but I think it does. And I think it was a very good drive from him. He basically outclassed Magnussen as well before the pit stops, because Magnussen was way ahead after the start. Grosjean obviously had his issues, but was able to drive through that and was able to be clear of Magnussen later on. I think it was a very good drive from him. And there's been rumours about his seat. People think Grosjean is, he's been on the cusp of not being in Formula One for some time now. He's announced that he's going to be talking to Peugeot about their hypercar entry for the WEC for 2021. Something he's moved a lot more into with his esports as well, doing the 24-hour Le Mans esports was Grosjean's team now. So it looks like he might be stepping away from F1. And do we think that's actually maybe not the best decision after this performance, but his seesaws don't help it?
Yeah, I think partly because he's been thought of as maybe lucky to retain an F1 seat over the last few years, that kind of then counts against him. People thinking he's unlucky to not have one. If that's the case this season, I think kind of the credit that he's built up of maybe staying on when other people didn't think he should, or when maybe results would have pointed to teams picking someone else. I think now it wouldn't be a massive travesty to lose him, but I think just looking at how he's been doing is probably better. He's just doing well. He's doing the job that he needs to do every weekend, and he's outperforming Magnussen over the last few races, and that's really good because we know Magnussen's a quality driver. So yeah, I think maybe it's just for him. Once the pressure's off now, then he is able to do a bit better, and just kind of take every weekend on its merits rather than looking at the kind of bigger picture around that.
Good point.
Yeah, I don't think I can add much more to that. I was nicely put, Adam.
Yeah. We did see an unfortunate moment on Friday when practice was called off for Haas and Alfa Romeo, when Mick Schumacher for Alfa Romeo and Callum Ilott for Haas were at the top two of the Formula 2 Championship. Both Ferrari junior drivers were unable to take part in their first Grand Prix weekend due to practice being rained off. Looking like they're going to get another go of it in Abu Dhabi, perhaps pushing Robert Schwartzman, who's, I think, 4th or 5th in the championship in F2, pushing him aside from his practice session drive. Do we think that's, do we think they've really missed out? Do you think Callum Ilott has missed out on a chance to show himself off to Haas?
Yeah, I think so, because it's difficult, because he would have had to have performed, and we will never know whether he would have done good or bad. But I don't think it helps Ilott's chances, and I think Schumacher is pretty much a done deal, so it doesn't really affect him. But for Ilott, well, I really don't know. I just don't know who's going to get a Haas seat, so I'm not sure if it helps or not.
I think I heard a good point on the BBC commentary of FP1. I think it was Jolyon Palmer saying kind of he doesn't know if he'd actually want to go out in those conditions. If the fog lifts a bit, but it's still cold, damp track, and it's not kind of ideal conditions to kind of stay UK. You've almost got a lot more to lose than gain, apart from actually gaining, being able to say you've driven an F1 car. If they push the kind of practice back to Abu Dhabi, that'll be interesting, because I'd be surprised if the deal, or at least one of the deals, isn't done by then.
Yeah,
it could be a kind of very different picture by then. But yeah, I think, it's obviously disappointing for both of them, but maybe just kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture for them, and look forward to getting another chance in Abu Dhabi, hopefully. And I do hope they get that, because they do both deserve it.
Yeah, the Formula 2 Championship will be wrapped up by then, finishing at the Bahrain outer layout the week before. Basically, what's caused a lot of the stir for Eilert was the revelation. It is a revelation, really, because you think with Eilert having a Haas FP1 drive that he's going to be being considered for the Haas Formula 1 drive for 2021. But Günther Steiner alluded to the fact that was more just a favour to engine supplier Ferrari, rather than him actually being in contention on Günther Steiner's list of 10, his long short list for the Haas 2021 drive, which meant that a lot of people thought, well, he's going to really have to show his worth this weekend, and he wasn't able to. A lot of French TV have reported that apparently Nikita Mazepin might have a seat with Haas in 2021, and there's so much to go into here, and I think we're probably going to have to save this for our next episode in a week. Because I think there's so much to talk about the Haas driver lineup, which is now completely opened up, similarly as the Alfa Romeo one seemingly closes and brings in Mick Schumacher and Kimi Räikkönen, as pretty much everyone seems certain of.
I'll leave it mostly, but I would just say I think I can see from Günther Steiner's own self-interest of kind of, obviously what...
We're not a Ferrari team.
Yeah, but also, when people are judging his team and whether it will stay in the sport, and, he has to take drivers back to Gene Haas he has to take results back to Gene Haas to say, look, this is why we should stay, and I can see perhaps why he doesn't want to take a risk.
Yeah, I mean, that's a teaser for probably a Haas special coming up in a few days, I reckon. So yeah, that's basically it for our Nürburgring Eifel Grand Prix race review podcast that we just had. Do we think Nürburgring lived up to everyone's expectations? Were you happy with it? Did you think it was better than expected?
Mine. Yeah, as I've said at the start, out of 10, I'd give it an 8.
Yeah, very nice. Nigel?
Yeah.
It's what I expected.
Yeah. You expected it to be a 4?
6, maybe.
Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it. It was something different, I guess, with the different challenges that they had for the drivers. And I think the track produced better racing than I thought as well. I think at the start of the race, I thought, oh no, it's going to be difficult to overtake. But then the different strategies and the time of the year it is allowed for an action-packed Grand Prix.
I think it's in some ways better that we got this type of race where it was, still eventful and still action-packed, a lot of battles, but it wasn't kind of just total chaos like, I don't know, say Hockenheim last year or Italy this year or Mugello. Yeah, I think, those races are brilliant, kind of 10 out of 10, but actually it's nice to get a different kind of race and in some ways more satisfying this type of race. So yeah, well done from the Nürburgring.
Yeah, it's nice to see Formula 1 drivers be really skilled drivers and not be crashing all the time, although there's quite a few spins early on when it got a touch damp and Kimi Räikkönen nerfed out George Russell out of complete racing crew, which was a bit of a shame for him on his record-breaking afternoon, which everyone is so happy about, apart from him. Okay, the final point before we end this podcast is going to be, we're going to go around the Zoom room and find out what everyone would give Cyril Abiteboul as the tattoo.
Well, I don't know about Nigel, but I didn't know this was coming.
Neither did I. I'm just going to go big face of Daniel Ricciardo on his chest.
I thought you were going to say over his face.
That would really mess up the face mask, wouldn't it?
Yeah. We can get a custom-made face mask. I think Daniel Ricciardo's suggestion of kind of something related to him, but also related to Germany, was a good suggestion. Honey badger.
Just in Horner's face.
I'll go for a honey badger kind of climbing up his leg.
Ooh, climbing up his leg. That's quite fun. That's a nice little touch there. I was maybe thinking, that's Austria, isn't it? Sound of Music. Oh well. I was going to say something along the lines of, the honey badger in a lederhosen, but that's Austria more than Germany, really. I think you could go for something that would really, bait him out, and I think a Honda logo, just a plain Honda logo, it would just be a bit weird for him, and you would really not like it.
McLaren badge.
McLaren badge is a good one.
Fun.
Yeah, or maybe even a honey badger
curling around his chin, around his ear.
A honey badger riding a Red Bull with Fernando Alonso's head, ready and waiting for lots of complaints from Alonso. It would be on his thigh. So if he ever wears like shorts, you can see the bottom of it, and it's just like 4 little legs on a bull and a tail.
I'd like one that it goes up his arm, and it looks like, I can't work out where my arm is. Looks like just kind of 2 lines going up to about there, and then it's actually like skid marks, and then it's got like a car like spinning out of control there. But it's a bit of a tease as you go up the arm, and then you only notice when he like rolls up his sleeve or something. That's what I'm going for. We
do have to give as a disclaimer, none of us are Daniel Ricciardo, and Cyril Abiteboul will get size and placement finalisation. Daniel Ricciardo only gets to choose the design, but it could be something absolutely lovely and actually quite nice, and probably like a thank you Renault or something like that, which would actually be kind of sweet. It doesn't have to be something that will make Cyril Abiteboul's partner absolutely despise him whenever he's getting out of the shower. And none of us have tattoos as well. Well, no. unless you're both hiding something from me. I do have Nigel's name tattooed.
Okay.
If you can get the tattoo from the Brothers Grimsby, where it's got like England World Champions 2016, 2016. You can get it for France, because just get it saying with love, Flavio Briatore. All your success comes from me. So yeah, we that was a bit of a balmy end as per to these podcasts. You can find us in lots of different places, and you can find out where those are by looking in the captions around this. Winging It F1 on Twitter, FredCoats1999 on Twitter for myself. Nice to know that you know mine after I read out yours so perfectly. Adam Dickinson01. That's correct. For Adam and Nigel C. Journo on Twitter. You guys do not get the chance to speak anymore after Adam broke the rules there and didn't say his Twitter handle. You can find the website online damn it, I've forgotten the website. This is not good.
Acast.
It is shows.acast.com/winging-it-f1-podcast. It's not a mouthful if you say it quickly, and that's where you can find everything. So thank you so much for listening, watching, doing whatever you wanted to do with this podcast. Have a brilliant day wherever you are, and we'll see you for our next Interrace podcast Haas special that we've accidentally teased. Goodbye, everybody.